Hi, welcome to Board Gems. In this video series, I like to talk about older games, maybe to a new generation of gamers who may not be familiar with them. And you know what? Some of these older games are really great. Sometimes you can find them pretty easy used. Maybe they're worth your time just as much as the newer games are. The game I'm going to talk about in this video is over 20 years old. It's one of the classic two-player games that came out in that classic Kosmos two-player line of the small, thin, square box games like this, just for two. When those games had started, we were in the OG era, where there were lots of games that were, for example, 3 to 5 players. Or maybe they were 2 to 4 players, but there was something a little bit unsatisfying about the two-player experience. A lot of times those games didn't scale very well for the lower player counts. They were more interactive. They worked better in a group. And so it was worthwhile to have dedicated two-player games. The game I'm talking about in this video is Balloon Cup, designed by Stephen Glenn. It's for two players. I started my usual habit. It's for blah, 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 blah. It's for two players. Anyway, this is ages 10 and up. Exaggeration. 8 and up is fine, honestly. And it takes about 30 minutes, probably pretty fair. In this game, you are playing cards from a hand of cards to your side, or sometimes your opponent's side, of 4 areas that you're trying to win over. The areas have things on them you want to win, and if you get enough things, you get to cash them in for one of the victory point cards, and the first one to get 3 victory cards wins. You usually play cards on your side, but in certain situations, or in the rules as written here, all situations, you can also play cards on your opponent's side, which makes it different from something like, for example, Lost Cities or Schottentotten, 2 of the games that probably this bears the closest similarity to. The board can show low or high. If it's high, then we want the highest sum on our side. But if it says low, we want the lowest sum. And whenever somebody wins the board, we flip it over, it's the reverse. So it gets this kind of interesting cycle of highs to lows. Maybe low cards are normally bad if most of the boards are high, but once we finish them, they're going to flip over to low and those cards become useful again. This one came out 2003. Still considered a classic, I think. Certainly was considered a classic 10 years ago when Rio Grande reprinted it on their own, because this was originally from Kosmos. Rio Grande did a co-production to produce English versions of it. But then Rio Grande went alone with the American designer Stephen Glenn to make Piñata, which was actually the original theme of Balloon Cup as the designer submitted it to Kosmos. And it has some important gameplay changes. In my opinion, the graphics were unfortunately a downgrade, but the gameplay is an upgrade. I'll show you how to play both games, and I'll talk more about the differences afterwards when I tell you whether it's still a gem or not. To set up the game, take these 4 double-sided tiles. They show low on one side, with the big number 1 and the green fields, and high on the other side, with mountains and the big number 13. Place them in a row between the players, such that you start with low, high, as you go up from 1 to 4. Nearby, place these trophy cards. This is what players want to win. There's 5. The first player to win 3 of them wins the game. You can see there are 5 colors of trophies. There are 5 colors of cubes. There's the most red, and there's the fewest gray. Put all of them in the bag, mix them up, and place cubes on each of the tiles. This number. So 1 on this tile, 2 on this one, 3 and 4. This is the deck of balloon cards. They also come in 5 colors, and they number from 1 to 13 in the 5 colors. But just like with the cubes, there are more reds than, for example, grays. I think grays, there are only 5 cards, 1, 4, 7, 10, and 13. Shuffle this up and deal 8 cards to each player, and you're ready to begin. Players are going to be competing in each of these 4 areas to gain these cubes. The first player to gain 3 gray cubes gets the gray trophy. You see the number 3 there, showing that you need 3 gray cubes. The first player to get 4 blue cubes gets this trophy. All the way up to 7 reds. The first player to have 7 red cubes gets the red trophy. And the first player to gain any 3 of the 5 trophies wins. A region scores when it has this many or this many cards on either side. When there's 2 cards here and 2 cards there, we evaluate. If the tile shows the high side, then the highest sum between the 2 players will get the cubes. For tiles that are showing the low side, it's the lowest sum that will claim the cubes. The only color you are allowed to play here is gray. The only color that's allowed to play here is blue. For something like this, there'll be 3 cards on either side, 1 gray, 1 yellow, and 1 red. So 1 card each matching the color of one of the cubes. So you could not play 2 red cards here, but you could play 2 red cards here because there's 2 red cubes. On your turn, you can play any card matching a color of cube, and you can play it on your side or your opponent's side. I have, for example, a yellow 12. I can only play it here or here because those are the only places that have yellow cubes. I want a high sum here, I want a low sum here. So I could play, because 13 is the highest, 12 is quite high, I could place the 12 there. Placing it here would be bad because I want a low sum, but in the rules as written, you can place it on your opponent's side, as long as they don't have a yellow card there yet. Because by the end, there can be no more than 1 card per cube, and the card has to match the color. But if, for example, you had already had a yellow card here, I could not play it on your side, because that would mean 2 yellow cards. There's only 1 yellow cube. In that case, I'd probably play it over here. Once a location has a number of cards on each side equal to the number, then we evaluate. In the case of a tie, the player who last played a card wins, and the winner will take all the cubes and put it in front of them. All the cards played would go into a discard pile. You would flip the tile over and then draw more cubes. After this happens, if a player has enough cubes to claim one of the trophies, then they do so. According to the rules as written, you can also convert 3 of one cube into 1 of another. So if you have 6 red cubes and I have 7 and I claim the 7, you have 6 useless red cubes. According to the rules as written, you can convert 3 of them into 1 of something else. And then, importantly, the player who did not get the cubes starts the next turn. And this is important because maybe you know you're going to lose this one, but the cards you have aren't very good here. You can just go ahead and play a card to this one, forcing the loss. If it's the last card played, the other player will get these cubes, but then you would get to go again because you lost that region. Keep playing until one player has claimed 3 trophies. That's it. You're ready to play Balloon Cup. To set up the game, place these 4 boards on the table in a row between the players. Mix up these wooden candy pieces and place a number on each board equal to this number. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Place the metal cards to the side here. They're numbered 3 through 7. The colors match the colors of the candies here. Note that some of the candies are kind of similar in color. There's red, there's pink, and there's purple. Shuffle up the deck of cards. It's important to know the distribution of cards, which the rule book doesn't say. This number is the highest card in each of the 5 colors. There's 2 of every value, but there's only 1 of the highest value. So for yellow, there's 5 cards in this deck, numbered 1, 1, 2, 2, 3. Now, the cards are quite colorful. Note that what you're looking at is the corner. So this is red, this is purple, this is also red. The other colors around the burst here in the corner can cause confusion. Like this is green, but this is red. Just make sure you're always looking at the corner. There are also a number of wild cards. These go up to 5. They have a white burst in the corner. Shuffle up the deck and give each player 8 cards and you're ready to begin. The goal of the game is to get these medals. The first player to get 3 yellow candies can claim the yellow medal. The first player to gain 4 pink candies will get the pink medal, and so on. The first player to get any 3 medals wins the game. So you're trying to get these candies. You play cards on your side, or in some situations, your opponent's side of each board. And each side of the board can have a number of cards equal to the number of candies, or equal to this number. There can be 2 cards on this side and 2 cards on this side. And each card has to match the color of a different candy. So this side can have 1 pink and 1 purple. Once it has a pink, the only other card you can play here is a purple. Once there are this many cards on both sides of the board, then you evaluate and see who has the higher or lower sum. This side of the board, you can see they are double-sided. This side of the board means you want a low sum. The piñata is low. On these boards, you want a high sum. The piñata is high. The 2 players will compare the sum of cards on their side of the board compared to their opponents, and for a board with this side showing, the highest sum will win. If this side is showing, then the lowest sum will win. Ties are actually not possible in this game. If you can play a card to finish a board, but that card's value means that the 2 sides would be equal, you are actually not allowed to play it. Each card has to match a color of candy. So for this board, 1 purple and 1 pink. Wilds represent any color, and you don't decide what color they are when you play them. Just when you evaluate the card, it just takes the place of whatever card is needed. So if I play this card here, I don't have to say it's purple or pink, and then later on I can choose to play a purple or a pink to complete my side. On your turn, you'll play a card and then you'll draw a card. You are actually also allowed to play on your opponent's side of a board, but only if you have finished your side. So if it looked like this, I could not play any card to this side of the board. But once I have played a card like this, I can play any card that matches a candy not yet represented by a card. And I could play that there. For example, there's no pink card here for this candy, so I can play a pink card to your side, because my side is complete. It has 2 cards. Once both sides are complete, let's add another card here, then we evaluate. For boards with this side showing, the highest sum will win. In this case, 9 beats 3. So this side would win the candies. These cards would go away into a discard pile. You would flip this board. So now we want low values, and you refill it with candies. Then the player who just won the candies checks to see if they have enough to claim a medal. If they have 3 yellows or 4 pinks, 5 purples, 6 greens, or 7 reds. And if they do, they claim the medal. Any candies of that color gained by the other player are now useless. Importantly, the player who goes next is the player who lost that board. So in this case, because this side of the board won the candies, it will then be the other player's turn. That's it. You're ready to play Piñata. Balloon Cup's a pretty easygoing game. It's a type of game that you can play and chat at the same time. It's often been called a spouse game, like if you're in a couple and you're the gamer and your partner is not so much into games, this is the type of game that you can easily both get into. There's not really deep strategy, but there are tough decisions to make. I do feel like hobbyists maybe have a little bit less tolerance for this nowadays. It's I have to make a bad decision. Where is this bad decision going to go? I don't have a good choice. I just have various bad choices. And what's the least bad in this situation? So an example of a tough decision. Let's say you have a handful of low cards, and everything in front of you kind of needs high. Well, you're going to have to play that low card, one of your low cards somewhere, right? And it's going to hurt you. But if you can finish a board, even though you know you're going to lose that high board, say, is going to flip over to low, it's going to be more likely that you're going to be able to play some of your other low cards afterwards. And importantly, even though you played that card, because you didn't win that board, you get to go again. That is a huge benefit in that particular context. I'm not going to say that decisions are crazy difficult, but you can make bad decisions. But the luck of the draw is really big in this game. Doesn't bother me. It does bother my wife, I have to say, who we've played this a number of times, and eventually she reached the point where she's like, I want to take a long break from this game because I am so tired of what she thinks is the bad luck that she's getting, right? And I have to admit, in some of those games, I had some amazing good luck. So it's one of those things, right? Obviously, don't take it too seriously. It is a light game with a lot of randomness. But if you're the type who wants to strategize and, the cards just aren't helping you, that can be a little bit frustrating. Now, one of the best two-player games ever made is a game called Schottentotten, also known as Battle Line. And this is the similar style to that game. In that other game I mentioned, you are playing cards to your side of a flag or a stone, depending on the theme, and there's 9 that you can play on, and whoever has the better combination of cards will win that one. And it's the same thing here, but it's more cyclical, because sometimes you want a high valued hand, sometimes you want a low valued hand, and because the boards are constantly flipping, it feels like it's more of a free flowing game. I'm not sure if it's luckier than Battle Line. It feels luckier. Battle Line is able to hide its randomness a little bit better. But in this one, the randomness can really stand out. And if you're the type who wants to do a thing, you think like, I need to do this. This is my, I need that. I need to win that. And the cards just aren't helping you. It's going to be a frustrating experience. You need to pivot. Okay, I'm not winning that one, but I'm not going to help you finish it either. I'm going to pivot. I'm going to focus over here. And it's a constantly changing calculation, right? Because you need to win 3 out of 5 trophies or medals. And of course, it doesn't matter which ones that you win. So if you think it's like, oh, yeah, I'm losing that one and I needed those reds to be able to get the red trophy, but obviously it's going to be super hard for me to get that. Maybe I won't think about the red trophy for now. I'm going to focus on a different color. So, be flexible, pivot. But in the end, it is a light card game. People who are sensitive to luck are going to notice the luck in this game more so than in a lot of other games of a similar kind of weight, a similar type of complexity, like how involved it is. This one feels luckier. So just a heads up about that. One thing is it's really hard to cycle useless cards. And I mean, cards are rarely useless. Even if a trophy is claimed, let's say the green trophy is claimed, and so you have a handful of green cards, well, still, even though you don't need the green cubes or candies anymore, it's usually not alone. Usually it's with other things that you might need. So you still need those green cards in order to finish the board that has the green candy. Even if you don't care about the green candy, you care about the other stuff, right? So I find few cards are useless, but there are lots of times where the cards you have in your hand are not useful right now. And there isn't really a way to cycle cards. If you absolutely can't play, then you can reveal that to your opponent and you can make an exchange. But if you only have 1 or 2 options, you have to play one of them. The game is frustrating, but in my opinion, it's frustrating in a good way. You have to play a bad card somewhere. Where am I going to go? What area do I care the least about? What area do I want to maybe encourage to be finished so that we can flip it? I don't care about the things to win on that, but I want to flip it and get new things out there which I might be more competitive on. I love that it can have a really tense finish, but because you can sometimes have a hand of useless or not very useful cards, or cards that if you play are bad for you, that can be frustrating. But it's also possible that the opponent has the exact same problem, and it can result in a tense finish, but it can also sometimes drag a little bit, where you're kind of just inching toward that last that last cube that you both need to win the last balloon trophy, and it's really tense and exciting, but the game can sometimes really slow down in that because you need one particular color and you're not getting it, and you show your hand, you get new cards, and you still can't play, and you're both doing that, right? It's a good game, though. For my money, it's actually one of the better two-player games out there. Two-player light card games. I should be specific because there's lots of two-player games out there, right? But like this stands up to me, especially the gameplay of the newer edition. For me, stands up compared to some of the classics, like Lost Cities, like Shot and Totten. Maybe not quite as good as those, but it's within spitting distance. Now, this is the 2003 edition. This had changes from what the designer originally submitted to Kosmos. Back then, Kosmos had outsourced most, if not all, of their development to a company called TM Spiele. That's a very interesting company. I'm going to talk about TM Spiele some later time. Through the development, through the testing, they decided to make some changes to it. Some of the changes make them easier to play, like there's less opportunities to get frustrated, but remove some of the challenge. One is it's not an all or nothing thing for the colors. So, you need 7 reds to claim the red trophy. If I have 6 and you have 6 and I get the last one, those 6 would be useless to you, right? Not in the rules as written here, because you can trade them 3 for 1. I don't much care for that myself, because it's more tense to have an all or nothing fight. We're both gunning for the red. They added a sort of a back door, right? Like, oh, if you don't get the red, that's okay. You can still do something else with them. But then it has a cascading effect, right? Because you can exchange those for another color. Maybe you win a trophy in that color, and then that color becomes useless to the other player. So I'm not a big fan of that. The main change, the main difference from the original design is that you can play cards on either side. Let's say there's a board that needs low cards. You get a low card, you can play it on your side. But if it's a board that requires high, then just play it on the other side. It does make it less likely that you'll have a useless hand. You can always play somewhere. In practice, it makes the flipping of the tiles useless. You have no reason to go from high to low. Because if you get a 1, it's useful in exactly the same way whether the board is high or the board is low. If the board is low, I play it on my side. If the board is high, I play it on your side. But I will say that not being able to play many or any cards from your hand is kind of a bit frustrating, so I kind of understand the change, but looking back, I think it made the game worse. So the designer has released his original submission, which A, did not have the 3 for 1, and B, required you to play all the cards on your side before you could play cards on your opponent's side. Easier to kind of get stuck with a hand of cards that you can't easily play. There is kind of an in-between that works quite well, in which you can't play cards of a color on your opponent's side until you've played cards of that color on your side. So you don't have to finish your side before you play on your opponent's. With these components, with these cards, that's my preferred way to play. But having said that, 2013 now, we get Piñata. And this was actually the original setting. This one has the original designer's rules. No 3 for 1 trade. You must play fully on your side before you can play on your opponent's. But it has a different way of dealing with the difficulties of playing cards when they're so restricted like that. It introduces wild cards. I was really skeptical of wild cards going into Piñata, being very familiar with the original. I'm like, I'm not sure the wild cards would make this better. But it's a great release because wild cards obviously can substitute for any color, but moreover, you don't have to decide what color it is when you play it. You can play the wild card early, let's say on a board that requires 3 candies, 3 cards. 3 different colors. You can play the wild card first, and you just play later any 2 cards of any 2 of the 3 colors. It's only when the board is resolved, or when you're playing your last card, basically, right? If you need purple and pink, and you play a purple, then the wild is pink, right? It's a nice release. It makes it less likely that you get stuck with a hand of useless cards. or less useful, I should say, not useless. It's rarely useless. But one difference is, whereas this one, the numbers go from 1 to 13, and that's the case even with the suit that there's only 5 cards of. It goes 1, 4, 7, 10, 13. And it makes the sums quite high to sum up. These ones, they go lower, and the suit that needs 3 cards goes up to 3. The suit that needs 7 cards goes up to 7. I worried that that makes the lower frequency cards. So like I think in this one it's the yellow, which is the lowest. There's only 5 yellow cards. So when yellow comes out, you really need those yellow cards. But the wilds help with that. And the wilds are especially powerful with those low suits. Because normally yellow only goes up to 3, but the wild suit goes up to 5. So it's a way that you can play a 5 yellow, even though there's no 5 yellow card. All these things together makes Piñata actually, for my money, the best rule set to play. Unfortunately, there's a thing that kind of keeps me from recommending this, and if you watch the how to play, you might have seen it already. It's the presentation. This one might be, especially by today's standards, might be considered stark. They're just, or austere. They just have colored cubes of the 4 primary colors in gray, and they're strong colors on a low saturation background. The boards are low saturation, so the colors really pop, right, out from what is otherwise a kind of a bland board. And this one, there's tons of color everywhere, and it's all oranges and purples and pinks, and they kind of all blur together. The first time you play, you might find the cards a little bit dizzying because they have all the colors on them, basically. There's the purple cards have green on them, and the green cards have orange on them. But it's easy enough to explain to people. It's like, just look at the corner, right? Just look at the color of that kind of burst symbol in the corner of the card. Don't look at the rest of the illustration. What's less easy to avoid are the boards that actually flip, the high-low boards. Orange and purple. They stand out compared to each other. But which is high and which is low? It's not something that you can notice at a glance, and it's very easy to forget, especially when you put candies on the boards and then it kind of obscures it a little bit, and the candies themselves are similar colors because they're purple candies, right? It's visually a mess. Like, yes, it says it's high, but it's an arrow going up, but it's not literally going up, is it? It's going, up relative to you or relative to your opponent, and the arrows are going this way, right? So it doesn't really stand out enough when you're playing what's high and what's low. I ended up having to use a mnemonic. I had to remind myself that orange was low. Low-range. And still, it didn't always work. What I've done, this is my personal result. I don't think many other people are going to do something like this. But I have both editions. I've kept this one, but I've taken out the insert and I've put all the contents of this one into this box. And when I play with these rules, these candies, these cards on the low saturation kind of pastel colored boards. And the candy colors really stand out then, and it's easier to tell the difference between the red and the pink, or the pink and the purple. That's my preferred way to play. Not an option for a lot of people. Honestly, if you can find a used copy of Piñata, and just try to think of something else to use to replace those boards, even if you have to print something out on on a color printer, just something low saturation, so the colors of the candies are strong and stand out on the board, and something that's very obviously different between high and low, which Balloon Cup does. So I use the Balloon Cup boards, but you can probably print something out yourself that works just as well. At least would work better than the boards in here. Rules-wise, this one's great. I think this is the best version. Rules-wise, gameplay-wise. Shame about the presentation. Honestly, I don't have a lot of confidence in Rio Grande games when they're doing original games. I just feel like a lot of times their decisions in terms of graphic design are really not great. I really appreciate everything they've done for the hobby, especially those co-productions they used to do with the German companies, and the German companies mostly had the right idea, I think, when it came to presentation. When Rio Grande flies solo, the results aren't as good, usually. Piñata is an example of that. But hey, this game came out 20 years ago. This game came out 10 years ago. Will we see another version? I hope so. And I hope it plays exactly like this, with a presentation a little bit closer to that. Thanks for watching. Remember, older games like Balloon Cup and Piñata don't stop being good because newer games come out. Take care.